Hi, and welcome to Healing from Grief and Loss. I am your host, Andrea, and this is where top experts are going to guide you on your journey to find strength, comfort, and joy again. On today's show, my lovely guest expert is the amazingly talented Tina Tessina. I'm so excited to have you here, Tina. Welcome.
Thank you, Andrea. I'm very excited to be here with you.
Yay!
This is such an important topic.
It is. It is very important, and I know that you have a lot of wisdom and a lot of things to share today. Tina is a licensed psychotherapist, an author, a speaker, a blogger, you name it. This lady does everything. So I think I'd like to start with your experience with loss. Can you share a little bit with us?
Sure. My experience started early. I lost actually my whole family between the time I was 12, which was my maternal grandfather, to the time I was 18, which was my father. In between there, I lost the people that I was closest to, my father's sisters, all died in that time too. By the time I was 18, there was only me and my mom, and our relationship was not the best. So I felt like an orphan at 18. So took me a long time to get around to actually processing all that grief. I just stayed in the shock area for a number of years and just kind of put one foot in front of the other. I had to earn my own living. I had to figure my life out. I was in college when my dad died, and the money ran out after another year, so I made it through 2 years of college there. Had to go back and put myself through school 10 years later to get my degree and my license to do what I wanted to do. So it was a long process. It took a long time. I had no really idea of what to do with the grief. I was afraid of it. I didn't want to face it. I went through the whole funeral and all that stuff for my dad, just numb, and stayed numb for quite a number of years after that. And then I got some help. I got counseling. I found out what to do and processed the grief a long time later. But I have clients all the time that have the same problem. No clear idea what to do with grief, how it works, what it is, how to go through it. And of course, with my experience and then later my education, I can help them do that.
Right. So that I'm sorry for that. That must have been a
Thank you.
very painful time in your life, and it was extended over a number of years.
It was actually a numb time. It wasn't really painful. It was numb. The pain came when I actually started processing. And
Right.
that was a relief, actually, to feel what I felt.
Right. Because it's said that with grief you can't hide from it or run from it. You can't shove it under the
It'll
rug.
just stay there. It
Yeah,
just stays there until you face it.
you've got to just go through it. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
when you were going through that period, did you have any sort of support system, or you pretty much were just on your own?
Not at first. I was on my own. I had a relationship for a couple of years with an older man, which I think was, searching for my dad. And then I got married to my husband, my first husband, who outwardly was like my dad, but inwardly had a lot of problems, gambling addiction among them. And so that, wasn't a good choice. But it was made off the grief, off the unexpressed and ununderstood, misunderstood grief. So,
Right.
that's what happens when we don't face what's going on and really deal with our feelings. Then we make decisions that are run by those feelings that we don't understand. and they turn out to be not so great decisions. I've been married for 38 years now to a wonderful man that I chose with my whole self, and that was a better choice.
Well, congratulations.
Thanks.
That's a good number of years for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I
Mm-hmm.
made it to 15, which is pretty good for my first round.
Yeah, yeah, that's very good.
So do you believe that there are stages of grief then that people
Oh,
go?
yes, there are definitely stages of grief, but they don't march like little soldiers in order. You know, they're emotional stages. So, yes, you go through stages of grief and they come and go and they go back and forth and they're jumbled up, but they're there. You know, the Elizabeth Kubler-Ross stages, denial, anger, bargaining, depression, and acceptance, are, you know, basically how grief works. So at first you're in the shock or the denial of the whole thing, and you don't really, most people go through the entire process of, you know, losing the person, taking care of the legal and the funeral stuff and all of that stuff without feeling much of anything. And the real grief doesn't descend until later.
Right.
So then we get angry that, you know, how dare you leave me like that kind of anger, and, you know, how could God do this to me, and all those things. And then the bargaining is, well, maybe if I do this, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of kind of fantasy stuff. There's a fantasy stage, which Kubler-Ross calls the bargaining stage, where, you know, maybe if I don't throw out his clothes, he'll come back, or, you know, those kinds of things. They don't make sense in a rational way, but they're there and we deal with them. And, you know, people lock their loved ones' rooms up. Queen Victoria kept Albert's room exactly as it was and had his suit laid out every day for him to wear, and for the whole, I don't know, many years after he died.
Wow.
And, you know, I've seen many parents do that, shut up their kids' room and leave it just as it was, and that kind of thing, because it's so overwhelming to try and deal with that.
Yeah, for sure.
And then we actually get to the grieving, which Elizabeth Kubler-Ross calls the depression stage. That's when we actually start grieving and feeling sad and feeling bad and crying and writing and talking and all those things you do to process it. And finally, you get to the acceptance stage, where you understand that that person's gone, and you've figured out that having them for that time was better than not having them at all, even though the loss is painful. And you start to process the memories and put them in perspective in your life, and you can move on to something else.
Right.
So it's a process, and we don't understand it, so we have a really hard time going through it.
Mm-hmm. So, what can we do to, like, what can people do to lessen the grief, or to, you know, sort of start the journey to get through it? What are some tips?
Express it. Express it. Talk about it. Write about it. Grief needs a witness. Tell somebody. Find somebody, whether it's a counselor, a grief group, or if you've got a really understanding friend or family member who isn't struggling as, I mean, you can work, two of you who are struggling with the same grief, loss of the same parent or something, can talk about it together and work through it. But sometimes the other person isn't at the stage that you're at. They're not ready to talk about all this. So you need to find somebody you can talk to. Counselor, a minister, a grief group, a very understanding friend who can just listen to you pour your heart out without trying to fix anything. And writing is tremendously valuable for it. Just to sit down and write all your memories and how you feel, and you know, what's upsetting to you, and what you're grateful for from that person. There's, on my website, there's a article called How to Write a Love Letter,
Oh, okay.
which is a list of prompts to write about all of this, all of these feelings you have, the anger, the fear, the upset, the hurt, the joy of, what you had together and all those things. So expressing grief is what you need to do. When something's been really torn from you, a lot of people pour their grief into action. The AIDS memorial quilt was one of those things. It's a lot of cancer and heart disease charities were built on grief. Mothers Against Drunk Driving is another great outpouring of grief. All those things were started by people who were grieving and needed some place to put their grief. So channeling it into something that's important for you is also valuable.
Right. Thank you. So you've written a number of books.
Yeah, I've written 15 of them.
I thought the number was pretty high. So do you have, we'll make sure we have, a link to your website and where people
right.
can to, if they want to reach out or if they want to, see the books that you've published.
Right. The one that's most helpful for grief is called It Ends With You, Grow Up and Out of Dysfunction. Helps you process all the grief that you might have from things that happened in your early childhood. Not only people you lost, but also people who just didn't show up for you or were mean to you or whatever. All those things, there's a way to process them that the book takes you through. So it's very helpful for that.
Right. That's wonderful. Okay, so we will make sure that we have a link to that. And so if you had to tell someone right now, I mean, I know you've sort of covered a few things with the journaling and such, and you need that outlet. A lot of people, do suffer in silence because they don't want to burden their friend or a family member, or, so they keep quiet. And we really want, you to be able to talk about it and to journal and to, so if
absolutely
someone was going through it right now that's watching, what are, say, 3 main tips that you would give someone that's just like right now in a dark place?
Okay, first thing is find somebody who can listen. Just listen, not try to tell you it's going to be okay and try to fix it for you, because that shuts your grief down when somebody tries to fix it. So find somebody who can just listen. If you can't find somebody then find a therapist or a clergy person, somebody who knows how to listen and to just let you pour out your grief. I really recommend writing or art, some kind of expression that's more than just you talking your words, but writing is so valuable for emotional things. It really helps you put them in perspective. So talk about it, write or express it through art. Dance is another wonderful way to work through grief. And do that until you get to the place where the more pleasant memories are coming up and where you start to remember the good things about the person that you lost. And that means that you're getting toward the end of the cycle of grief. I mean, grief never completely goes away. The rest of your life, if somebody says something that person used to say, or you get into a situation that scenery that you were with that person in, your grief will come up, but it won't be so overwhelming. It'll just be, yes, I wish I could do that again with so-and-so, and I'm sorry they're not here. So then it becomes very manageable. But grief never goes away completely. Once we lose someone, we grieve as much as we loved. And that memory of them being lost. You know, I lost my dad at 18, and he was the best connection in my life as a child. And every time, you know, new book comes out or something, it comes up, I wish he were here to show him that. Now, it's ridiculous because my dad was born in 1904 and he would be, I don't know, 116 or something at this point. But I still think of him the way he was when I knew him. And it still comes up. I'd love to tell him about this. So I do.
Yeah.
The other tip I have is talk to your lost one.
Yeah.
Talk to them. Tell them how you feel. Tell them that you miss them. I recommend to my clients that they make a little shrine with like a picture of the person and maybe a flower vase with one single flower in it or something, and talk to that picture and tell that person how you feel and how much you miss them. You'll feel so much better when you do that, and you'll hear that person talking back to you in your mind. You'll know what they would say, and it feels like being in contact. So those are all things you can do when you're grieving or when you know you need to grieve.
Thank you. Thank you for
You're
thank you
welcome.
for sharing that. Yes. We could talk forever.
Thank you for doing this, Andrea.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. Thank
Thank you for doing this. It's I think there's so much grief right now. You know, people who've lost loved ones that they couldn't see in the hospital, and even loss of your favorite restaurant or something can cause you to grieve. And so there's a lot of grief in the air right now, and this is a timely project.
Yes, thank you. There is a lot.
You're welcome.
There is a lot going on for sure, and
That's right.
we all grieve differently, but it's grief all the
Mm-hmm.
same. And yeah, it could seem small to someone and huge to you, and
Mm-hmm.
you have to go through it. You have to go through it.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
So no, you go ahead.
Expression
Yeah.
is the thing, expressing the grief. That's the thing that gets you through it.
Absolutely. So before we sign off, you have something that you're going to be gifting our viewers. Did you want to let you go over that?
Thank you. Yes, I'm sorry, something touched off allergies, I guess.
I'm fighting.
Maybe I'm allergic to grief. Yes, I have an article called Surviving Loss and Thriving Again that I'm giving out with this process that you're doing. So it takes you through all those stages I talked about and what to do and what emotional reactions you might have that might startle you or feel like maybe that you shouldn't have them. And it tells you how to deal with all of them.
Wonderful.
So it's very helpful to people.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. That's exciting.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
I'm going to be getting my copy too. I'm going to want to read it too.
Good. I hope you'll let me know what you think.
I will, for sure. It's always a pleasure talking to you. Someday, I hope that we can be in the same room chatting and enjoying one another's company. And I just, I have so much respect for you, and you're such an inspiration. And I can't,
Thank you.
I can't thank
Thank
you
you.
enough for being one of my guest experts on this show. Thank you so much, Tina.
My pleasure. I admire you for doing this.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to my audience for tuning in today. I hope something touched your soul. I know it sure did mine. And on that note, until the next time, be safe, be kind to yourself, and remember, you're not alone. Bye for now.